The Khamisiyah bunker complex is estimated to be 100 bunkers and 60 warehouses, each the size of a super Walmart. The destruction of Khamisiyah was not even discussed until June of 1996, when it was addressed by Senator Specter at the Senate Armed Forces hearing. General Schwarzkopf said the following.
As I stated, the first time I ever heard of Khamisiyah was in 1996 when it was first announced by the Department of Defense, and nobody was more surprised than I was.
A little later in his testimony, General Schwarzkopf apparently contradicted himself when he said the following.
I remember General Franks came to me, and I assume it was Khamisiyah he was talking about at the time, because it was about the same time frame, and talked about this huge ammunition dump that they had found with literally tons and tons and tons of ammunition in it, and there was no way they could possibly retrograde it, and I challenged him on that, and he convinced me that no, they couldn't retrograde it, and therefore they were going to destroy it in place, and I said, fine. Now that's Khamisiyah. From what I heard about the size of the bunker that Franks was talking about and the others that they blew up, these were huge bunkers with crates and crates and crates and crates of ammunition in them, and I can only assume that they either didn't recognize them or didn't see them at the time. We were under pressure to withdraw, and under the pressures of withdrawal, we did destroy everything we could so that the Iraqis couldn't fall back in on it and use it in some other war against us.
General Schwarzkopf just stated that he was concerned about the Iraqis regaining control of the ammunition that was contained at the Khamisiyah Ammunition Depot. However, several individuals have come forward with other reasons as to why the bunker depots were hastily destroyed.
I'm Dan Topolsky. I was the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Defense NCO for B Company, 37th Engineer Battalion. I was on the Khamisiyah Bunker Complex mission.
Sergeant Topolsky was one of the nuclear, biological, and chemical non-commissioned officers in charge of identifying munitions at Khamisiyah Bunker Complex in Iraq.
I felt betrayed. I felt like we had been sold out for dollars when I saw what I saw inside those bunkers.
Even though I had 40-some years of military service, if you were to bring in a bunch of ammunition and pile it up in front of me, and one of them was a 122-millimeter rocket with chemicals in it, I would not be able to tell you that that had chemicals in it, particularly if it was an Iraqi rocket with Arabic writing on it or something of the sort. We identify ours when we had them in a very specific way by color coding. I don't have the slightest idea what the Arabs did.
General Schwarzkopf stated that we identified our weapons by color coding. According to Sergeant Topolsky, the colored bands identified biological and chemical munitions inside the Khamisiyah Bunker Complex. According to Sergeant Topolsky, the yellow or purple bands indicate chemical munitions. The green bands represent biological munitions. General Schwarzkopf also said he could not identify munitions, especially if they had Iraqi markings on them. You will also note these munitions were plainly marked in English and indicated these munitions were supplied by countries like Jordan, England, Russia, as well as the United States of America. According to the 1972 Geneva Convention, weapons of mass destruction are illegal. Therefore, according to Sergeant Dan Topolsky, it is very likely that these munitions were destroyed not so much to prevent Saddam Hussein from regaining control of them, but to destroy the evidence of these countries breaking international law. On April 17, 1997, General Colin Powell testified before the same Senate panel, and as was the case of General Schwarzkopf, he was not required to take the oath to tell the truth. In regard to the chemical mop suit, General Powell said the following.
We use protective overgarments, boots, masks. I don't think you have seen a single battle scene from the Desert Storm War where our troops were not in mop gear.
What is Gulf War Syndrome? Here are the facts. There is, at this point, no formal, universally accepted definition of Gulf War Syndrome, a multi-symptom chronic condition. It's named after the Gulf War of 1990 to 1991, when the United States and associated international allies drove the Iraqi military forces from Kuwait. According to the National Academy of Sciences, more than 250,000 of the almost 700,000 U.S. personnel deployed to the area suffered from persistent, unexplained symptoms after their return. These symptoms could range from fatigue to cancer. The Research Advisory Committee on Gulf War Veterans Illnesses, or RAC, found scientific evidence leaves no question that Gulf War illness is a real condition with real causes and serious consequences. But what caused it? Who's responsible? According to former U.S. officials, there's a cover-up afoot. Here's where it gets crazy. In March of 2013, former Veterans Affairs researcher and epidemiologist Stephen Coughlin alleged that the Department of Veterans Affairs routinely disseminated false information about the health of America's veterans, withheld research showing a link between nerve gas and Gulf War syndrome, among other accusations. And that's not all. According to journalist Nora Eisenberg, the Federal Institute of Medicine reported that veterans of Afghanistan and Iraq may suffer the same disease, and, around the same time, the RAC accused officials in the Veterans Administration of Public Health of undermining, distorting, and, essentially, lying about the nature of Gulf War syndrome. The RAC traced the most likely or primary cause of Gulf War syndrome to neurotoxins. In July of 2013, scientists working at Georgetown University published a study showing that veterans who reported symptoms of Gulf War syndrome also exhibited neurological damage. This damage in areas of the brain linked to heart rate and pain was not present in the control group. The researchers theorized that the affected veterans were consequentially more sensitive to pain, easily fatigued, and had a higher tendency to experience loss of short-term memory. Additionally, they found different patterns in two groups of veterans, indicating that this syndrome might take different paths in different individuals. However, these studies are preliminary and not without critics. As cited by New York Times writer James Dow, the University of Chicago's Dr. John Baylor said the study did not provide enough evidence to clearly link the veterans' symptoms to their deployment in Kuwait. As research continues, scientists aim to expand their understanding of the nature of the syndrome. This is a cause that, on the surface, everyone can get behind, unless, as Stephen Coughlin implies, there's something the U.S. doesn't want you to know about Gulf War syndrome.